I absolutely love selling with webinars. Webinar marketing is one of my favorite methods of building out sales processes, and in this video I'm going to take you through my super fast sales webinar script creation. If you're looking to get started with webinars, or maybe you want to start doing webinars with your customers, or maybe your customers want to start doing webinars and you want to help them out, or maybe you are already doing webinars and the conversion rates just aren't where you want them. Sometimes I find that people have a disconnect between the product and the training they're giving. So in this video, we're going to go over my super fast webinar script template, as well as tell you everything that I've learned from building webinars from scratch. So let's get into it. Hey there, funnel builders, Mike here from Sell Your Service. Thank you very much for joining me on another video. Remember, I've got my 6A framework, focus, report, and assessment that you can find, and it'll give you a full breakdown of what you need to work on within your business. Go to sellyourservice.co.uk/focus. Anyway, enough bullshit. Let's get into talking about some webinar marketing. So if you've ever thought of building webinars for your customers, or maybe as in you want to sell your services to customers, webinars are a fantastic way of doing that, but maybe you haven't quite known how to put it all together. You know, some of them seem to be an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours long. It's not necessarily to do with the length of the webinar, it's more to do with the quality of the content inside it. But it can be difficult to know, well, what exactly are you supposed to create? How does the script work? How does that all fit together? I believe that there's no such thing as writer's block. I believe that if you are suffering from creative block or writer's block, it means that you haven't got a template and that you're not following that template through. Just like creating this YouTube video or creating a webinar, I have a template and a script that I go through where I just fill in the blanks, hit the beats, and it pretty much gives me a template that's ready to go. Now, the problem is that there are a lot of webinar templates out there. There are a lot of webinar scripts out there. And in my opinion, it's a bit like giving you the tactics without the strategy. Some of the best marketers in the world that I really look up to, like Miles Beckler, Ryan Deiss, they always talk about how you have to understand the strategy first before you can use the different types of tactics. I find the same with sales letters, the same with blog posts. Just because I give you a script doesn't mean that if you fill in the blanks, it's necessarily going to turn into a high converting webinar, because you'll be missing a core fundamental part of the process, which we'll talk about in a bit. I mean, do people even still use webinars? That's like the thing that I constantly hear, and the reality is yes. We are just scratching the surface of the extent and the power that webinars can bring both to our customers and our own industry. So under no circumstances do I want you to think that webinars are dead, or that we haven't got enough potential left in them for you to be able to use them for your customers, because you absolutely have. There's no indication at all. If anything, I would say that webinars are just beginning to take off and become mainstream, and we're right at the bottom of that curve that's going to go up. So if you're struggling to create the webinar script in the first place, or maybe you're already running webinars and they're just not converting at the rate you want, it's probably because you're putting the product and the offer in the wrong place at the creation point. That doesn't mean that you're putting it in the wrong place on the webinar. It means you're not thinking about it early enough in the process of creating the webinar script. So that's what we'll talk about in a little bit when we go over to the whiteboard. Maybe your customers want to start using webinars as well, which is awesome, and you want to kind of help them set that up. I remember we had massive success with a SaaS company that we worked with when we started just doing weekly webinars. They were only 45 minutes long. It was about 30 minutes of content and then 15 minutes of pitching and Q&A at the end, and they just ran that weekly, and their sales skyrocketed because of it, because they were just hammering out this amazing content every single time. And here's a pro tip: they didn't even change the content each time. It was pretty much the same webinar each time. They just got really, really good at it. So I'm going to share with you how I created that. So yeah, let's go over to the whiteboard. So this is the really common model that a lot of businesses use when they create a webinar from scratch. And the reason why this doesn't work is because there's no cohesion between the topic and the offer. You see, the problem that a lot of businesses will face is they'll want to think of the topics first. They'll then over-explain that topic and try to teach too much, because we have a confusion around education within the sales cycle. Although it's important, it can actually be detrimental to the sales process. And then they say, oh, and by the way, we have this product or offer or service at the end. And the reason this doesn't work is that usually this kind of product or offer is aimed in this direction and the topic is aimed in this direction. If you had to start a webinar from scratch, the first thing you need to think probably is, oh my God, we need to have something that people are going to want to join. I want to create a webinar around how to create the world's best pancakes, or I want to create a webinar on how to save £20,000 when remodeling your house. And then they think, but my service is home insurance. So surely if I educate people during an hour and then make a sales pitch to them for 30 minutes or another hour or whatever, that'll be enough for them. But there's no cohesion between the topic and the offer, because they think of the topic first and they think, I really want to teach someone something that's going to get a lot of visitors. And it's a bit like having a really solid advert, but then really weak conversion copy on the back end. This is one of the ways that people build webinars wrong, and it's one of the things we're going to flip. This is another way that people do webinars badly, in my opinion, is they'll set up the webinar as a product demo. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with product demos. They're an extremely valuable part of the process. But when it comes to creating a sales webinar, they're very, very strong during the kind of consideration stage when people are actively looking to buy. But even then, you need to be really specific about what it is that you're actually covering off. Again, people try to over-educate and they try to put way too much stuff in, and then they have this kind of weak call to action at the end. I'm like, well, that's a really weak way, because all you're doing is taking people through rather than making the offer to them and then closing them at the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip the way that we build out our webinars by focusing on the product first. Presumably, you already have a product or a service waiting to go, and you're essentially looking to generate sales for that product. So the first thing when we're thinking about building out a webinar is, where are our customers now? Regardless of the topics you want to talk about, regardless of what's trendy at the moment or what's working well on ads, all of that kind of stuff, put it aside. Where are your customers at the moment? I want you to think about the top 3 problems that they've got. Now, depending on who your customers are, presumably your product or service is going to help solve those problems. The thing that I'm going to repeat throughout this video is, your webinar should be designed to help someone get results faster and easier. That's all we're going to think about again and again and again. Faster and easier, faster and easier, faster and easier. So they're suffering from these 3 problems. If they don't worry about it at night, it's not a problem. No one wakes up thinking, oh my God, I need a marketing consultant. What they do is they wake up thinking, why is our growth stalled? Why aren't we generating any more leads? How am I going to afford payroll this month? How do I know that I'm going to get through the next 9 months? I don't have any confidence in the business. I don't have any confidence in myself. That's what people worry about. So those are their problems at the start. And what your product or service does, again, presumably if it's done well, is take them to the end. So after working with you, they have these top 3 benefits. Because a benefit is just a desirable future that the customer can envisage. So afterwards, they have confidence in their business. They have a plan of where they're going to go. They know how they're going to generate leads. They know how they're going to generate customers. So at the end, you know, they're generating regular leads, they're generating regular sales, they have confidence in their abilities, they have a plan, they have strategy, they have direction, they have clarity, all of this kind of stuff, right? So that's what your product or service, and it's the same with anything, right? It's the same with absolutely anything that anyone's selling. Your service is the transformation that takes someone from the start, where they are now, to where they want to be. This is where your webinar is going to come in, because you'll have certain steps or sequences that you'll take people through. It's usually between 5 and 7. That's what I teach to the guys on the coaching calls and the funnel business game plan and stuff like this. You have 5 to 7 steps that you take someone on. In order for them to feel confident, in order for them to have new leads coming into their business, in order for them to have the right amount of protein in their diet, whatever it is, you're going to have to give them some steps, and these will be sequential, right? So it might start out with an audit, and it might then have a design stage, and you might think, well, then you need to work on your copy. You'll have a process for getting someone through to the end. Your product is one of the fastest and easiest ways to get someone to that end point. There's a couple other kind of pieces within this. First of all, there's probably something which we call a roadblock, which is usually a myth, or something that they believe in or they've tried before and it hasn't worked out. So our job is to basically help them get over that roadblock. Now what I want you to do is take the first most immediate 3 things that you would teach that customer in order to get them results. What are the first immediate 3 things? Now that could be at a very high level, that could be this overall process. It could be that actually the first thing you need to know is the process. It might be that you take the thing from step 1. Now let's say that we are, and we'll use some examples here, as funnel builders, because that's who we are. At the end, they're basically ending up with confidence, they end up with clarity, they end up with direction, they end up with more traffic, more leads, more sales, all of this. In my opinion, the first thing they need to understand is headlines, okay? I think headlines are really underutilized, because my specialist area is blog content and I help people. This is creating blog content to get to this endpoint. For example, I think the first thing you need to understand is headlines. Now remember, one of the earlier mistakes we talked about was people trying to over-explain. A webinar, an hour, would, believe it or not, be enough time to talk about just headlines. We might even need to scale that back. In fact, we would need to scale that back. So within that, I want to think about what is the first 3 things that they're going to need to know about within headlines. And I'm going to give them some templates. I'm going to talk about testing. And I'm going to talk about power words. Now I'm taking cues for the topics that we're going to put in our webinar from our product. This is why this is so important. Because now I essentially have the 3 topics that I'm going to talk about in the webinar, and it makes a lot more sense when I then position the entire product to the customer. Because now we have basically the 3 most immediate things that they need to work on, and I can teach them something around those lines, and I can teach them very easily. And we can follow a structure similar to a sales letter, where I have my promise, and I say, in this webinar, we're gonna cover off X, Y, Z. We then have a problem, which I say, the problems are, you've got low sales, you're unsure on how you're gonna make any difference within your business, and your leads have stagnated, they've stopped growing. I say, and that's the problem. We then cover off a myth, which remember will be the same thing that I'm already covering off within the product. So that's the first, and this will take about, 2 minutes. This will take about, I tend to kind of agitate this a little bit, 5 to 10 maybe. This will take about 5, and then we get into the actual topic, okay? So I'm going to say, right, I'm going to cover off topic 1, I'm going to cover off topic 2, cover off topic 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the framework that's going to generate more leads for your business, as well as develop the fundamental understanding behind how to generate more sales. Because without a great headline, no one reads on. And if you can create great headlines, you can create great benefits. You can create great emails, you can create great social content, great blog content. This is the starting framework for how you get to this point. Because what we then do is we teach them these 3 points, these 3 topics, and overall, this takes about 1 hour. Now, obviously, if you want to extend it or shorten it, that's completely up to you. And then we move into the sales stage, which is about 30 minutes. And at that point, right at the beginning, I ask and I say, hey, how are people feeling about this topic? Are people enjoying this? Are you getting value from this? Do you understand? They go, yeah, I absolutely love it. I go, great. I'm gonna help you get here faster and easier. Yes, these 3 immediate things that I have taught you are extremely valuable in helping you get to this endpoint. However, if you want to get there faster, if you want to get there easier, if you want to get there with less work and with more automation, if you want to get there with me, maybe with a member of our team, you can get our entire framework session for being able to learn how to get to this endpoint. And the webinar structure, this is basically the sales pitch here, is where we explain what's included throughout the entire process. But because we have already taught them an aspect of what is within this, and it might be that you build the headline to them. If you're a copywriter, awesome. You're going to teach them, hey, I'm going to teach you how to write incredible headlines. This is how we do it. First of all, we need to have a template. We also test them, and I'm going to teach you about power words. However, if you want to get to the end result where you want to have a ton of blog traffic and loads of high converting adverts and loads of click-throughs on your emails, then hire me. I'm going to help you go through this, remember, because I'm going to help you get those results faster and easier. That's how we tie the topic that we talk about and educate people on and give massive value to up front, and then position the sales piece at the end after going through it. We're not just tacking this on, we've actually built the webinar out of those 5 to 7 points, and then we've drilled down into the top 3 things that they need to learn first. And it might be that this myth isn't necessarily to do with the whole process. You might put that myth in this sales piece here, and it might be that you think headlines, what's the common misconception towards headlines? You know, no one likes clickbait, spammy headlines, and the truth is actually they still work, and they work really well if you do them properly, and there's no reason why you can do it without, you know, dignity or ethically or anything like that. So that might be the myth that you cover off in those 3 areas there. But that is how we take our current content or our current product and turn it into a sales webinar. So to sum up, start with the product and the offer. Don't think of the topics first, think of the product and the offer. What are the top 3 problems they're facing? Where are they now? Where do they want to get to? What's your process for getting them there? And then what are the first most immediate things that you would do? And it's possible, I understand how this process works. It might be that the first most immediate things that you would teach someone might be from this stage or this stage, and I understand that, you know, if to teach someone, oh, you have to do an audit, it's kind of like, it's a bit dry. So you absolutely want to have a look for areas that are interesting, but take the prompts from whatever your process is and the product that you deliver. Even if the product you deliver is you working on it as a consultant, as a designer, as a marketer, whatever, you still want to take people through elements that help them understand how they're going to get to this endpoint. People are looking for clarity, they want to improve themselves, they want to feel like they're in control. And that's how we do this, by sharing with them the 3 most important points or the 3 easiest things to learn. Don't overcomplicate it, and also don't try to over-educate people. Keep it really tight, really small, because at the end of it, you can say, look, if you liked this, if you think this is going to help out your business, it just so happens that I'm a copywriter who can help you with this process and more. Let me tell you about our incredible service. Are you already doing webinars for your customers? Are your customers doing webinars that they want you to work on? Let me know in the comments down below. I've really enjoyed making this video. I absolutely love doing sales webinars. If you're trying webinars, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see what they are. Remember, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and click the little subscribe button, as well as the bell icon, to get notified of when I produce new videos. I help funnel builders like you escape the crushing constraints of the traditional outdated agency model by helping you create multiple scalable streams of income. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. Massively appreciate your time. I'll see you on the next video. Have courage, commit, and take action.